Hi everyone! I find that watercolour tubes are best for pouring transparent glazes. It's essential that your water pot and trigger spray are filled with very clean water. Also essential is very thick paper like Saunders Waterford knot, 425 grams at least, and it being thoroughly dried front and back between watercolour glazes. Mark in any basic shapes with coloured pencil like Pastel Pencil and then tilt the board in the direction you want the paint to flow. Atmospheric glazes may be enhanced with Inktense Block or pastels. Sometimes I use pastel before a watercolour glaze, but sometimes I use them at the end and to rectify any unpleasant marks. Also, I just do a coloured sketch to test the colours out on the paper, which can vary depending on the colour shade of the paper. Let's get going. Hi everyone! Pouring watercolours. Fabulous! My tonal sketch shows my light, medium and dark tones from the reference photo, and I'm going to start with pouring Aureolin yellow watercolour, and it's a pea-sized amount mixed with 3 squirts of clean water to a skim milk consistency. Using my trigger spray, spraying the back to help it to adhere to the board, and spraying the front. Shell to about 45 degrees, an angle of 45 degrees to help the flow of paint, using a hake brush, starting at the top, very gently like a feather, going all the way down, covering the paper completely. It's Saunders Waterford watercolour paper, 425 grams, 200 pounds, not paper. It needs to be thick for pouring watercolours. Checking that it's completely covered. And then tilting off the excess water. This way and pour it from this side, and let the paint do the work. Keeping it mainly in the foreground. Now I'm going to finish tilt first. going over with my hake brush, dipped in water, and just looking for some kitchen roll. And then again, mopping up excess, and must be a fault with the paper because it doesn't seem to want to cover up that little bit there, but no matter, that's fine. Just checking the paint's where I still want it. It's moved a little bit, but I'm still happy with that. So now I'm going to dry it. It's thoroughly dry now. I dried it with a hairdryer carefully, not holding it too close. Front and back is totally dry. So now I'm going to put the second glaze on by pouring Scarlet Lake mixed to a skimmed milk consistency with just a tiny amount of Opera Rose added, about half the amount of the Scarlet Lake, which just gives it that bit of zing. So I've mixed it thoroughly, and I'm going to wet the paper again on the back. So I'll put it here to the board, and on the front, and then use my hake, starting from the top. In fact, yes, starting from the top. Gently, very gently, so I don't lift off the colour beneath. And that colour will shine through. Letting it absorb in, making sure it's thoroughly wet. It's not, I've missed a bit there. And there. Yes. And now I'm going to drain off the excess water. There's a little bit there I've missed. That's it. Because then I don't dilute the paint too much. If it's too watery, then you can get backgrounds as well. So there, that's lovely and wet and absorbed into the paper. So it's ready for the next glaze. I'm going to keep it predominantly across the centre, so I'm going to turn it that sort of way and just pour it on. Let it go. Mainly in the foreground, but up into the sky as well. Going to add a little bit of trigger spray, not too much because it does dilute it, but I just want the paint to really flow really well, and I want it to be a little bit red at the top, but not too red, because when I put the blue on, then it will look a bit violet-y, too violet-y. So, but I do want some warmth in the sky. So I'm just going to tilt the board until I'm happy. It's looking quite atmospheric already. That's why I love this technique of glazing, or layering you could call it. Watercolour layering. I can't help that blob there, there's a fault with the paper, but I can go over it with pastel. If you ever have that, you can go over it with soft pastel and rub it to, I'm not going to fiddle with it because that will mess it up. Or I could just trim the bottom. I think I'm going to leave that now to dry. Well, it's thoroughly dry now, and I've got my third cup, my third primary colour. I've used yellow, red and blue, ultramarine blue this is, with the green shade. That sounds a bit odd, but it is called that. And I've mixed it thoroughly to a skimmed milk consistency. And I'm going to turn the board upside down this time, propping it up again on the shell, and put some kitchen roll. I'm going to do the sky area, but I don't want to wet the whole of the sky, so I think I'll put it about there, and then use my trigger spray and my Hake brush into my lovely clean water. I'm just going to put a few little streaks very gently so I don't lift the colour, and then, as before, wet the paper thoroughly. So now, when I pour the colour, it will just go in the wet areas and leave the dry areas untouched. I'm going to turn the paper, no, I think I'll turn the paper this way up now, because I want the stronger paint in the top of the sky, so I'll just pour it on now. Quite a lot of came off there. It's very messy, this technique, but it does give such beautiful transparent glazes. Now I need a bit more there. Take this off now, it's better. Upwards there, and then let it dry, just going around the edge again. There. In fact, it's fairly stable, so I may actually before I dry it. So what I'll do now is wet the sea area, but I haven't got any paint left, so I need just a little half a piece size amount. Just put two squirts of the pipette. They're quite useful, those pipettes. Going to wet the sea area, leaving a few gaps. I'm going to finish this with Inktense blocks. But first of all, I'm going to pour on the middle section where the cloud is. I think I'm going to dry that now and then add that last bit of paint. Just make sure there's no excess paint to cause backgrounds, that's fine. It's thoroughly dry now. We need a trigger spray for the cloud and the sea area. Just a little. I'm going to add a little touch of Scarlet Lake to the blue ultramarine for these clouds and the sea area. Using a hake brush, a 1-inch hake brush, keeping it loose with lovely wet washes. A little dry brush technique where we just take off the excess paint off the brush. Let's lighten the tone a bit, like the sun catching the clouds in the distance. And now to finish, an Inktense block which will add texture and deepen the tones. Perhaps we need a few birds in the distance. Keeping it all very simple. The simpler the better, really, with this pouring method. For me, I like simplicity, so this is just a coloured Inktense pencil to pop some birds in. Give a sense of scale. Hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time. Unusually, the sky was heavily laden with rain in Portugal. The dams were far from full and the local boreholes were drying up. So it seemed unimportant that the roof tiles, some which had been recently replaced, faced southwestwards where the storm was coming from, and that they had no lap to deter the coming torrential storm. But this is fairly typical in Portugal and does not seem to pose a problem due to the scarcity of rain. I became aware of a strange trickling noise emanating from the laundry, reminiscent of a watering can being poured out, making a puddle on the floor as I entered. Upon entering the kitchen, a similar scene presented itself. No matter, for houses in this part of the globe rarely have carpets. A makeshift gutter and towels draped around sorted it out, and by the next day all was back to normal. I like to ponder God's love being poured out into our hearts, although we may not realise it.